Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Dustin back with a follow-up on my High Perfect Morcant deck. Told you guys I would follow up after I got a few new cards, did some play testing with it and stuff like that, and yeah, I think I got it in pretty good shape at this point. Um, so High Perfect Morcant, 2 black and a green for a legendary Elf Noble. She's a 4/4, so she get that thick body. She says whenever she enters or another elf enters, each opponent blights 1. So blight means they put a -1/-1 counter on a creature they control. And you can tap 3 untapped elves you control to proliferate, and you activate that only as a sorcery. So the concept with this deck is it's got a few, it's got poison counters kind of as a backup, so you can poison counter the table, proliferate, but this deck also can make, get a big board, swing big damage, make a bunch of tokens, make your double your +1/+1 counters, make big creatures, go wide and go tall and swing big. So the deck itself, it has an average casting cost of 3 right on the dot. So in this deck, I currently only run 33 lands, but I have several mana dorks. So I think 33 is a good number with the amount of mana dorks that are in this deck that you'll be able to, I believe there's only, what is that? There's only three spells over 6 mana or more to cast in this deck. The majority are between the 2 and 4 mana cost. So to start, we're looking at, what do I got here? 14 forests and 8 basic swamps, which honestly, black is such a splash color in here. It could probably even go lower, but I don't want to find myself searching for a swamp. But I could probably get away with going a little bit lower, to be honest. So 14 basic forests and the 8 basic swamps. Karn's Bastion for the proliferate ability. Command Tower, Deathcap Glade, Abundant Countryside. It's a newer one. It creates shapeshifter tokens. I figure if there's a turn at some point where I got nothing to do, I got mana, I can create, a 1/1 shapeshifter token with Changeling. It becomes an elf. It gets all the buffs that I have on the board to make it bigger. Fix my light a little bit here. It's a little bright. It's a little bit better. Overgrown Tomb, Blooming Marsh, 3-Tree City. Again, you're going to have so many elves and elf tokens on the board. You can make tons and tons of mana with 3-Tree City with this deck. Undergrowth Stadium, Eclipsed Realms, Path of Ancestry, and Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. As you'll see, this can sync with a couple creatures in here that give elves forest walk. So then, the entire board all has forest. Now all your elves can just swing without, being unblockable, because each land is a forest in addition to its other land types. So we'll start with, what do we got here? Enchantments. We'll start with the enchantments in the deck. We have 9 enchantments in this deck, and a lot of them are token doublers, counter doublers, things like that. And the light's kind of screwy today. See if that helps. Nope, doesn't at all. So starting off, we have Branching Evolution for 2 and a green. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many gets put instead. Beastmaster Ascension from the Avatar set, 2 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on this enchantment. As long as this enchantment has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5 Again, you can proliferate those quest counters, and things like doubling season will put double those counters on it. So you could easily swing, with 4 creatures and then have doubling season on the board, and now all of a sudden all your creatures are going to get +5/+5 on top of whatever other buffs they may have or counters they may have on them. So Sylvan Library, 1 in the green, basically card draw. Primal Vigor, 4 in a green. If 1 or more tokens will be created, twice that many are created instead. And if 1 or more +1/+1 counters we put on a creature, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put instead. Doubling season, again, 4 in a green. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens, doubles those tokens. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, twice that many are put on it instead. So difference with Primal Vigor and doubling season, this is just token doubling and +1/+1 counter doubling. This doubles your tokens and doubles counters that you may put on your permanents instead. Flourishing Defenses, 4 in a green. Whenever a -1/-1 counter is placed on a creature, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. As I said in the previous video, if you have Morcant on the board, or if you have Flourishing Defenses on the board, you cast Morcant. It will essentially continue to -1/-1 your opponent's boards until they run out of creatures. And then because the Flourishing Defenses has the you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play, it won't soft lock the board. So a fun little combo there. Springleaf Parade, this is from the new Lorwyn Commander set. I actually haven't played this card yet, but whenever it enters, create X 1/1. So it's X green for an enchantment. When this enchantment enters, create X 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature tokens with changeling. Creature tokens you control have tapped to add 1 of any mana. So you can cast it X to create a bunch of 1/1 changelings, and then all your creature tokens turn into mana dorks. So pretty sweet deal there. And then lastly, we have Hardened Scales for a green. If 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on a creature, that many +1 are put on it instead. So again, just pumping your elves with 1/1 counters, or your creatures with 1/1 counters. What do we got? Sorceries. So we'll go to the sorceries next. I think this is sorceries. These artifacts, and instants. All right, we'll start with sorceries. Finale of Devastation, X green, search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with mana value X or less, put it into the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. If X is 10 or more, creatures you control get +X/+X and gain haste until end of turn. This is a finishing swing here, whereas you have all kinds of mana dorks. This deck ramps pretty quick. Getting 10 to give all your creatures +10/+10 until end of turn and haste, that's not going to be a problem. This is one of the finishers in here. Another finisher, Triumph of the Hordes, 2 green until end of turn. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect. Again, swing big with all of your elves. You know that infect damage is going to get through. Now you can proliferate that infect damage, and if you don't deal lethal, then you can just start tapping 3 elves to proliferate the board. Dread Return, 2 black, return target creature from the graveyard to the battlefield, flashback, sack 3 creatures to do it again. Flare of Cultivation, 1 green, search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, put 1 in your hand and 1 in the battlefield tapped. It does have an alternate casting cost of sacrificing a non-token green creature. So another quick way to ramp. Demonic Tutor, 1 in the black, search your library for a card, throw it in your hand and shuffle. Natural Order, 2 green, as an additional cost of the spell, sack a green creature, and then search your library for a green creature card, put it on the battlefield and shuffle. So again, Natural Order, great way to cheat out a big dog. You'll see some of the big dogs in the creature stack when we get there. And then Feed the Swarm, 1 in the black, destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls, and you lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. So some cheap removal there. To the instants we go. Heroic Intervention, 1 in the green, permanent you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Protect your board. Galderheim Ambush, 3 in a green for an instant that says create X/1/1 green warrior creature tokens where X is the number of attacking creatures. It also prevents all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-elf creatures. So some protection, some token generation, and a great way to deal some damage to creatures and, to maybe ping some creatures from an opponent's board when they announce blockers. Noxious Revival, 2 for a green for put target card from a graveyard onto its owner's library, top of its owner's library. Imp Mischief, essentially, Black's Deflecting Swat, change the target of target spell with single target. You lose life equal to that spell's mana value. Savage Summoning for a green. This is some protection for casting. Let's say you're going to cast a big boy, you're going to cast your commander, and you have a table that has a lot of interaction. So for 1 green, Savage Summoning can't be countered. The next creature card you cast this turn can be cast as though it had flash, and it can't be countered, and it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and those +1/+1 counters can be proliferated, make the creature bigger, but again, some protection to allow you to cast a big creature, especially if you have a table that loves interaction. Next instant is Infernal Grasp for 1 in the black, destroy target creature, lose 2 life. Obscuring Haze, 2 in a green to prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures your opponents control. It has an additional casting cost if you have a commander, or if you control your commander, you can do it without paying the spell's mana cost. And then our Vamp Tutor, black, search your library for a card, put it on top, lose 2 life. Move on to the artifacts, the Banyan Tree or the Great Henge. 7 and 2 greens for a legendary artifact. This costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So depending on the size of your creatures, you could cast this thing for just 2 green if you have something with 7 power, which is very possible with this deck. You tap it to add 2 green, gain 2 life, and whenever a non-token creature you control enters, give it a +1/+1 counter and draw a card. So again, those +1/+1 counters, those can be proliferated, make your creatures bigger, bigger, and bigger. The Earth Crystal, 2 green for a legendary artifact. Green spells you control, or green spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And if 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, twice that many are put on instead. And it also has 4 tap ability for 4 in green. Tap it to distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 creatures you control. Again, you place those 2, Earth Crystal is going to trigger to instead make it, it's going to double that. If you have anything else on the board that could double those +1/+1 counters, now all of a sudden, it gets big quick. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. Put the Aether Spark in here just for its ability to not only create a bunch of mana, but also to, it's +1 to attach it and put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. But it has that, it also has that ultimate. You can ultimate it for 10 loyalty to add 10 mana of any one color. And what's great about the Aether Spark is it can't be targeted if it's equipped to a creature. And when you attack with the Aether Spark, if you deal, when it deals combat damage, it gets that many loyalty counters when it's your turn. Defense Grid, 2. Each spell costs 3 more to cast except during its controller's turn. Found this deck, it doesn't have a lot of interaction, so to say, where you would be casting spells during your opponent's turn, really. There are instances where you may want to, but it's more so I'm using it as protection for me being able to get Morcant and other big creatures out on the board. My pod plays a lot of interaction, so just a way to kind of prevent that, so I can get my pieces on the board start making, my elves big, or threatening to give, poison counters, and then just start proliferating. And then lastly, we have the Contagion Engine for 6 colorless. When it enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target player controls. That's gross. That's going to sync well with the Blight. And, the flourishing defenses and things like that. But also it has a tap ability for 4 colorless and tap. You can proliferate twice. And lastly, the big stack here. So 36 creatures. We have 9 enchantments, 7 artifacts, 7 sorceries, 8 instants, and a planeswalker. But our big stack here would be our creatures with 36. Majority of them are elves. So it looks like 28 of the 36 creatures are elves. So we'll start with Gaia's Herald. 1 in the green. Creature spells can't be countered or by spells or abilities. He's a 1/1. I'm gonna say the creature's power and toughness now. Lathril, Blade of the Elves, 2 black-green for a legendary elf noble with menace. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. And you can tap it and tap 10 untapped elves you control for each opponent to lose 10 life, and you gain 10 life. So again, you get a big board with a bunch of tokens. You can tap 10 of them, and each opponent loses 10 life, and you gain 10 life. Swing big, you have a bunch of untapped, and your opponent's got 6 life left. Oh, well, tap these 10, you're dead. Urobooroid, I think that's how you pronounce it. Urobooroid, don't know. Taps 4, 2 green. It's a plant worm, 1/3. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, or X is this creature's power. So that's going to continue to increase each turn. Puts tokens on all of your creatures, and again, because it's not a static buff, it's counters being put on. Those are you can proliferate them, and they are eligible for the token doubler. So really cool card, great card from Edges of Eternities. Yeah, really cool card. Deathrite Shaman for a black or a green. It's an elf shaman, 1/2. It has the tap to exile target land from a graveyard, add 1 mana of any color. Tap a black and tap it to exile target instant or sorcery from a graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life, or you can tap a green and tap it for exile target creature card from a graveyard. You gain 2 life. So some graveyard hate here for your opponents, because you can utilize elf, the Deathrite Shaman's tap ability on your opponent's graveyards. Bloom Tendi, 1 in the green. It's a 1/1 elf druid. Tap for each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So this thing can tap for 2, a black and a green, if you have a black and a green permanent on the board. Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. Now we get some of the big dogs. 4 green for a 6/6 legendary Phyrexian Praetor with trample and haste. If you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each kind of those counters onto that permanent. And if an opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many on those kind, rounded down. So great card, especially when you're putting counters on your opponent's permanents or the player. Now twice that many is being put on there. Dwynen Gilt-Leaf Dane, 2 green for a 3/4 legendary elf warrior with reach. Other elves you control get +1/+1, and whenever it attacks, you gain 1 life for each attacking elf you control. Heritage Druid taps for a green. You can tap 3 untapped elves you control to add 3 green to your mana pool. Elvish Mystic, green for adding a green. Another mana dork, 1 or more elves. A Dionys Elvish Arch Druid, 3 and a green for a 3/3 legendary elf druid that says elves you control have, whenever this creature becomes tapped during your turn, untap it and put a +1/+1 counter on it. The ability only triggers once each turn, but now you're putting +1/+1 counters, which again can be proliferated. They can be doubled with Doubling Season or Primal Vigor, or anything like that. Poison Tip Archer, 2 black-green for a 2/3 elf archer with reach and death touch. Whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Remember, that's not just your creatures, that's any creatures on the board die. Each opponent loses 1 life. Marwyn the Nurturer, 2 and a green for a 1/1 legendary elf druid. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn, and then you can tap Marwyn to add an amount of green equal to Marwyn's power. Again, +1/+1 counters, they're proliferatable. You can proliferate them. I don't know if proliferatable is a word. Fauna Shaman, 1 and a green for a 2/2 elf shaman. Tap a green and tap it to discard a creature card and search your library for a creature, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. Elvish Champion, 1 green for a 2/2 Lord creature. All elves get +1/+1 and have Forest Walk. So again, when I was talking about Yavimaya, now all of your opponents control a forest. Now all your elves get Forest Walk. They're unblockable. Draga Warcaller, green 1/1 elf warrior with multi-kicker 1 green. You can pay an additional 1 and a green any number of times, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each time it was kicked. And other elf creatures you control gain +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on the Warcaller. So you can't proliferate the static ability on the bottom, but you can proliferate the counters that it enters with to buff your other elves. Gyre Sage, 1 and a green for a 1/2 elf druid with Evolve. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and you can tap it to add green to your mana pool for each +1/+1 counter on Gyre Sage. So again, you proliferate the +1/+1 counters. Now you're getting more mana from Gyre Sage when you tap her. Skithrix the Blight Dragon, Skittles, 3 black for a 4/4 legendary Phyrexian Dragon Skeleton with Flying and Infect. And tap a black to give Skittles haste until end of turn, 2 black to regenerate it. Priest of Tatiana, 1 and a green for a 1/1 elf druid. Add green for each elf on the battlefield. Numa, Dragon Chief, 2 and a green for a 2/2 legendary elf warrior. At the beginning of combat during your turn, you may pay XX. When you do, distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target elves. It also has partner, but I'm not utilizing it as a partner. We got Morcant Loyalist for 1 black-green for a 3/2 elf warrior. Other elves you control get +1/+1. When this creature dies, return another target elf card from your graveyard to your hand. So a little bit of recursion with Morcant's Loyalist. Eldamiri, Lord of Leaves for green 2/2 legend. All elves gain Forest Walk. So again, to Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. Is that what it is? It's Cradle of Growth, right? Yes, Cradle of Growth. And elves cannot be the target of spells or abilities. So another piece in there that can help protect your board. Evolution Witness, 2 green for a 2/1 elf shaman mutant with adapt 2. So 1 in the green. If this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Evolution Witness, you may return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So again, a little bit more recursion. You can get around the whole adapt thing because you can only do it if there's a +1/+1, if there's no +1/+1 counters on it. You proliferate, that's adding a +1/+1 counter. Now you can return another permanent from your graveyard. So good way for recursion right there. Champions of the Perfect, 3 and a green for a 6/6 elf warrior. As an additional cost, you have to behold an elf and exile it. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, so some great card draw. And when this creature leaves the battlefield, you can return the exiled card to its owner's hand. Next we have Leaf Crown Visionary, green for a 1/1 elf druid, static ability of giving elves +1/+1. And whenever you cast an elf, you may pay a green. If you do, you can draw a card. So a little bit of card draw there. Circle of the Dreams Druid, green for a 2/1 elf druid. Tap to add a green for each creature you control. Beast Whisperer, 2 green, 2/3 elf druid. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. Lysolana, Huntmaster, 2 green for a 3/3 elf warrior. Whenever you play an elf spell, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. Necroskitter, 1 green or 1 black for a 1/4 element with Wither, which means this deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters. The fun part though, whenever a creature an opponent controls with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, you may return that card to the battlefield under your control. So again, if you're blighting with High Perfect Morcant, and then you have Maha, it's Feathers Knight, all those creatures are dying and now they're coming over to you. So we'll go to, Maha, it's Feathers Knight, 3 black for a 6/5 legendary elemental bird with flying and trample. It has ward, discard a card, but it also states creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1. So all of your opponent's creatures are base toughness 1. That makes it difficult for them to block, but also with the blight, it's going to kill the creature each time you it's going to kill their creatures each time you cast an elf spell if they have this, and you're blighting them with High Perfect Morcant when you cast an elf creature. Venerated Rot Priest, 4 green, a little bit of toxic here, so a 1/2 toxic 1. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter. Necrogen Rot Priest, 2 black for a 1/5 Phyrexian zombie with toxic 2. Whenever a creature you control with toxic deals combat damage to a player, the player gets an additional poison counter. And you can tap 1 black and a green to give target creature you control with toxic death touch until end of turn. The poison counters is kind of the backup plan. Again, we saw with Triumph of the Horde. It's kind of the backup strategy, like, your elves are getting big, but all of a sudden you get a bunch of cards that are coming with toxic, and you're like, well, I could just ping them for poison and then proliferate them to death. That's one way to win the game with this deck as well. Generous Patron in that beautiful Galaxy foil. 2 and a green for a 1/4 elf advisor. When this creature enters support 2, so you put +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other creatures. And whenever you put 1 or more counters on a creature you don't control, draw a card. So that works well with Morcant. Each time an elf comes on, if you're playing against 3 opponents, an elf is entered, -1/-1, drawn 3 cards. Lorosaurus Shepherd. So this is a new piece that I just got the other day. I haven't been able to play it yet. A 1/1 elf shaman, taps just for a green. Spell can't be countered. Your green spells can't be countered. If you notice, this deck is probably, almost all green, essentially. And it also has the ability of creating dinosaur elves, which is wild. I thought that was a joke. Tap 4 and green until end of turn. Each elf creature you control has base power toughness 5 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other creature types. So it doesn't lose any of the static abilities that buff your elves. And it's going to give them a base power and toughness of 5/5. And they're dinosaur elves. Come on. Can't go around that, right? Last 2 creatures we have Realm Walker, 2 and a green. For a 2/3 shapeshifter with changeling. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You will obviously choose elves. You may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you can cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. And lastly, Evolution Sage, 2 and a green for a 3/2 elf druid. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, proliferate. So again, This is my new pimped out version of my High Perfect Morcant deck. I told you guys it would definitely change when I released my, you know, day one Morcant deck essentially. Um, Made several changes to, you know, to the deck, and kind of it still has the same flow though, you know, the same purpose of having the poison counters as a secondary win condition, primary win condition being, you know, get a bunch of elves, make them big, swing large. That was kind of how the deck originally started. And even with the additions and tinkering, it still kind of does the same thing. Um, but anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think. Um, I've already won a couple games playing this deck. I think it's really fun to play. I will say it does get a little confusing with the static buffs and the counters. So I've had to kind of make sure I brought some paper with me a couple times to write down where I'm at with static buffs as well as which are counters, just because it can get confusing when you're trying to proliferate your counters or anything like that, or you know, you're swinging big. So that is one thing. It does get confusing with the static buffs versus the counters. Um, but you know, just bring a piece of paper with you or something. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Any changes? Let me know how your Morcant deck, if you built one, is going. How you built yours. But yeah, if you guys like it, throw me a like. Let me know what you guys think. And I'm thinking about sharing my wife's Dragon deck with you guys next. I've been putting a lot of work into that. I think it made it relatively competitive in non-competitive games. You know, if you're playing a casual game, I think my wife's Dragon deck connects. She's won a few times against us without us actually letting her win. So maybe that'll be my next one that I'll show you guys, because that's 6 of the decks I've listed now. I got one more. So thank you guys for watching. Have a good night. See ya.